Hello, welcome to Mindset to Results. And today our guest is Jess Armine. He is functional integrative medicine clinician with a very big experience and helping people to treat complex chronic illnesses. And of course, our audience are business owners and entrepreneurs. And today is a great opportunity to listen from Jess, how he can share with us the insights from his many years practice so we can stay healthy, happy, and achieve even more results in our lives. Hi, Jess.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much. You have such a interesting profile and many years experience helping people with serious chronic diseases. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, why you choose to help people with that, and what did you discover during your years?
Well, as you indicated, I have about 5 decades worth of experience on both sides of the traditional and alternative medicine areas. I was also a registered nurse. I was a paramedic, and I became a chiropractor and developed expertise in a lot of different areas. And I did notice that what we are singularly failing at is the treatment of very common things like anxiety, depression, and most of the neuropsychiatric areas. And very often people are disabled by it. But I've also noticed that business owners or those people of high energy, CEOs and so forth, are very prone to this because of they're essentially using up their resources very quickly and they're not treating themselves. They're depending on the medications, but not treating themselves. So that's what pushed me in this direction. And I developed expertise in treating chronic multifactorial illnesses that had not achieved success elsewhere. Because my point of view comes from the cell out rather than from the outside in.
Yes, amazing. And it is true when people are goal oriented, they are committed, they're disciplined. Many times they put the goal above themselves. So they think,
Yes.
oh, I will achieve this, and then I will think about myself. And when they achieve first goal, then they don't stop there. They think that, oh no, this is okay. Like I could achieve it, but next one is the more important. Yes, and like this, like there is a category of people who are hyperachievers. Yes, so
Right.
when the saboteurs tell them that their worth is only when they achieve things, and in this process they forget about themselves. Yes, and deny symptoms, deny some signs, and then they can, as you said, can find themselves overwhelmed, burnout, with insomnia, depression. So it would be really great to speak today how we can help to prevent these conditions.
I think we should start by telling everybody that high achievers, okay, we'll group everybody into high achievers, okay, and we all know what that means, are compensating for the stress by hyperstimulating their adrenal glands, which are your stress glands, okay. And you may notice that as you go on in life, that when you go on vacation, unless you have a very active vacation, you say, I'm going to rest, but it really bottoms out. Excuse me. So at some point, you decompensate, okay, and you cannot ignore symptoms. You may not even notice symptoms, or you've learned to ignore them, okay,
Mhm.
which is the mark of a good leader. They ignore their symptoms, but there's a point where your body cannot compensate for all that excitation, okay? So the real trick here is to look at things from the inside out and say, okay, how can I support my body's functions so I don't decompensate at some point. And that decompensation is not only neuropsychiatric, it's gastrointestinal. You may have autoimmune diseases. It all comes into the same uh, area of chronic inflammation that has been, let's face it, set up by the stress. it opens you up for things like the COVID SARS-2, the spike protein from COVID, from all kinds of different diseases are now allowed in, and that stresses your system further.
Yes. What from your practice, what advice you would give such people, how they can balance
Well,
health
there's
right?
something I developed called foundational treatment. Okay. And I know we want to talk about the gut-brain axis as one of the mechanisms of how the neurological, these mood, let's call them mood disorders, things like anxiety, depression, a little bit of OCD, that kind of stuff. And when it gets out of control and why it gets out of control. But uh, let me do that first, and then I'll tell everybody a simple path that they can follow that will compensate or do well with almost anything. Okay. And if it's not, then that's when you need to see a professional. Okay, let's talk about the gut-brain axis. I lectured on this in Ireland very recently on the gut-brain axis and its relationship to neurodiversity, autism, ADD, ADHD, that kind of stuff. Essentially, there is a communication between the immune system, the neurological system, and the endocrine system. The endocrine system puts out hormones. Your nerve system puts out neurotransmitters, and your immune system puts out things called cytokines and chemokines. Now, they have the receptors, obviously, for those substances, but each system has the receptors for the other systems. So those systems constantly talk to one another. If we look at just the gut-brain axis, what we're really looking at is the immune system talking to the brain. And essentially, within the gut, lots of changes can happen. Okay. There's leaky gut syndrome, there's inflammation, there's food intolerances, and those signals signal the brain and cause neurotransmitter imbalance that results in the expression of things like depression and anxiety and all the other, neuropsychiatric designations. And I want to tell you that those designations are not diagnoses. Okay. A diagnosis should point you to a root cause. And there's a reason for this. So, as an example, a sore throat is a symptom, but a strep throat, I know why you have the sore throat. If you have anxiety, that is a set of symptoms. Okay. The question that's never looked at by traditional medicine, and I'm not anti-traditional medicine, okay, because I have been on both sides, is that they don't look at why the anxiety is there. If it's situational depression, you break up with somebody, that kind of stuff, that's understandable. But it's that free-floating anxiety, that free-floating depression that has no particular reason, but continues to interfere with your life. That's the thing I'm talking about. So in the gut, what happens is we have layers of protection. One is a mucus layer. The next are the cells themselves, which kind of look like this. Okay. And they have tight junctions, and these little guys are so you have more surface area for absorption. And leaky gut syndrome, things like stress, infection, toxins, that kind of stuff, okay, start injuring the cells. And the cells some of them will die, and the tight junctions will open up. And antigens, which are usually from your food, get into what's called the basement membrane, or if you want the big word, lamina propria. By the way, when I teach, I never use big words. Okay. And if I always tell my students, if I use a big word, ignore it because I'm going to explain it in about 10 seconds. Okay. You're not going to be impressed that I can pronounce words with many syllables. Okay. I know a lot of doctors do that, but they're doing it to impress themselves, not their patients. Okay. Because when you sit there and you don't understand what I'm saying, that's not worth anything. Okay. So when those antigens get through, they start having an antigen antibody reaction, and that creates inflammation progressively. And as chronic inflammation builds up, wherever your genetic predispositions are, is how you're going to express. So if you have genetic predispositions towards anxiety, it's going to express that way. If you have genetic predispositions towards autoimmune disease, it's going to express that way. Okay, beforehand, and I'm also an expert in genetics. The genetic, what are called polymorphisms or SNPs, which tell you that the enzyme that the gene creates may not work as well, was not a problem when you were a baby. Okay, because your pathways were not stressed. Okay, so when you start going through life and you have a lot of stressors on those pathways, things like food intolerances, antibodies, and a whole mess of other things, it becomes more difficult for the body to work for reasons I'm going to tell you in a second how to fix it. And you start seeing the expression of whatever the predisposition is. Okay. So what creates those holes are damages from infections, viruses, parasites, um, various stressors. And if anybody's been in a really high stress situation, you're damaging the gut. Okay. Primarily. Now, in your gut, serotonin is created mostly. And it's also the neurotransmitter that runs the gut system. Okay. Now, within the gut, inflammation, the microbiome, they send signals to the brain directly. And this has been proven scientifically. Okay. And within those signals, if those signals are normal to go back and forth, they also affect the hormone system. But when those signals get, let's call them wonky or out of balance, it creates imbalance up in here. And those neurotransmitters that should be in a nice balance of, inhibition and excitation and stuff go out of balance. And then you start expressing symptoms. But this takes years to happen. Okay. That's why you don't really associate it. Usually associated with an event. Okay. Now, normally, these types of conditions are treated with medications. Again, I'm not anti-medication. I will tell you that I'm the guy in the middle. I'm against the injudicious use of medications, and I'm against the injudicious use of supplements and herbs and so forth. In other words, the practitioner should be integrative, giving the patient the best of both worlds. So what happens is you don't have that particular balance because you've lost the neurotransmitter balance. You don't have something, a lot of this or not of that, and they give you medications with presumptions. For instance, if you have depression, the first thing that your medical physician is going to do is put you on an SSRI, Prozac, Cymbalta, stuff like that, with the presumption that the lack of serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, what it does is prevent some of the reabsorption of serotonin from that little cleft in between the nerves. Now, we also have little storage areas in the nerves that supply you. Okay, and we have the manufacturer that supplies the little storage areas. And when you're under a lot of stress, you're using up those neurotransmitters pretty good. And when it gets to the point where there's very little left, that's when you have symptoms. That can take months to years to happen. So by giving him medication, you're preventing some of the reuptake, giving you temporarily more of whatever, let's say, serotonin in the synapse. But eventually it's going to fail because if you don't have it, you don't have it. The presumption on depression is that serotonin, that's a bad presumption because a lot of imbalances can cause depression. So here's the usual scenario. They'll give you medication, and let's say in 30 days it's not working real good, they'll double the medication. If 30 days is not working that good, they'll change medications and on for about 4 to 6 months. And then they start changing medications. They have things like Wellbutrin that support serotonin, support norepinephrine and dopamine, and there's all kinds of different combinations. Now, what I do is I will actually test for the neurotransmitters, okay, to see what the balance is. And that has been controversial because my medical colleagues say, well, that's not central nervous system testing. And they're right, it's not, okay? Because to get central nervous system testing, I'd have to take spinal fluid out, or I'd have to cut a piece of your brain out, which is pretty bad to do in an office or anywhere else, okay? The testing from urine or platelets or blood come from, a combination of things, but you can see a pattern. And the pattern gives you a starting point of how you should intervene. Now, I will intervene with amino acids and things to help the manufacturer produce it. And a medical physician will use a medication to prevent some of the reuptake. Okay. They both have kind of the same result, except the medication will fail at some point. So what we're trying to do is re-achieve the balance. But you have to also ask the question, why did the imbalance happen? Okay, we go back a step in the gut and go back a step, towards the actual cell dysfunction. Okay, and that cell dysfunction is the cell membranes not being patent, not having what you need for the biochemical processes to happen. So I said all that to say this. If you really want to know, and this is very useful, of how to take care of yourself, and you know light, good air, good water as best you can. Okay. If you have a lifestyle of fast foods and overindulging in alcohol or any other kind of recreational drugs and, just over exercising, you're just using up your reserves without replenishing them. Everybody says take multivitamins, and they would be right. But the problem is absorption. That's what people don't talk about. You have to pay attention to absorption. What does that mean? You have to give the vitamins in a form that it can be absorbed. Why vitamins and minerals? Well, each gene creates an enzyme, and those enzymes need vitamins and minerals, certain ones, in order to work. If they don't have it, they don't work very fast. So if the whole system slows down, you're not getting the results. So one of the basic concepts is to take a good multi-mineral, multivitamin in order to supply your cells with what they need to work. Now, the hierarchy of absorption. Intravenous, which I don't suggest because it's expensive and it has to be done by prescription. Liposomal, liquid, powders, capsules, and tablets. I'm going to advise you right now to avoid tablets. In medicine, medications, they have to do bioavailability studies, which means the tablets have already been tested for absorption. In the vitamin arena, they're not under such constraints. So there may be, I often see, and I've taken x-rays of people, I can see groups of vitamins that don't even get broken down. It's very hard to break down a tablet. And since most people have difficulty with digestion, okay, and they have a gut problem, which is almost ubiquitous, you can almost assume that they're not going to break down a tablet too easily. The trick is look at liposomal. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. Liposomal are vitamins that are put into this little sphere that get directly into the cells, absolutely directly into the cells. And you can go on Amazon or almost anywhere else and write in liposomal multivitamin, and you'll see a series of them. And they're dry liposomes, and they get absorbed very, very well. They also have liposomal minerals, and we are in a mineral deficient society. Okay, our food, even if you're eating organic, is grown in soil that's essentially mineral deficient. Okay, so if you take a good multivitamin, multimineral, and I always suggest to people that whatever the bottle dose is, take double or take that bottle dose twice a day because we're mostly deficient and our bodies will absorb, believe it or not, and you want to build up those vitamins and minerals, which are called cofactors and coenzymes, into biochemical reactions. Okay. Now, it's a good presumption if you've been under a lot of stress and you have these symptoms that you have leaky gut syndrome. Okay. And I know this is, again, controversial. Okay. And people test for it. But here's the thing. If I treat you for leaky gut, I'm not going to hurt you. Some stuff for the mucus layer, some butyrate, probiotics, that kind of stuff. You won't be hurt. You're going to use it anyway. If you have leaky gut and I don't treat it because I've listened to a zonulin test or something like that, I am hurting you because leaky gut is the major producer of inflammation and it gets worse and worse and worse. And when you have chronic inflammation, nothing's going to get better. Okay. That's your body's just fighting the inflammation all the time and other things start showing up. So how do I treat that simply? Okay. Here's a basic way of doing it. You need to create a mucus layer. Of course, that mucus layer, that first layer, is where your microbiome, your probiotics, that's where they live, that's where they eat, that's where they do their job. That's where they trap the antigens and the antibodies actually tie it up like hog tying. It's actually interesting to see. Okay. So how do you create a mucus layer? Well, under the classification of prebiotics, okay, things like inulin, slippery elm, a whole mess of different things. And what they're called are demulcent herbs, okay? And they immediately become, as soon as they hit your system, into mucus and spread themselves around the entire gut, okay? It does take a little bit to recreate that, but that's the first thing you're going to start with is something to create mucus. Okay, you'll see it as FOS, and you may see it as XOS. Okay, there's a powder of that, or XOS/GOS. Okay, they have lozenges that you can take. I'm not, I'm sorry, I can't mention product because that would be inappropriate. Okay, but you can see that easily on Amazon. In addition to that, you want to take digestive enzymes. Okay, if you're over 35, I guarantee you, you're not producing enough digestive enzymes. Okay. And they have good multiple digestive enzymes. Things that the more animal side would be benzene hydrochloride, ox bile, pancreatin, plus a whole mess of the plant enzymes. So, and a single enzyme like papain or something like that, probably not as good. And some people like bitters. Bitters can work also. All right. But a good multiple digestive enzyme. Why? Well, here's the thing. Let's talk a protein. A protein is just a long chain of amino acids. Okay. Your digestion is supposed to break that down to each amino acid, and that gets absorbed right through the cell membranes. And then the body reconstructs it into what it wants. If you don't digest it completely, you end up with these little short chain proteins, and those are antigens. So believe it or not, we're the greatest creator of our own antigens. One of the ways of getting rid of allergies and stuff like that is to digest better, where you don't have those getting in. Simple, easy. And what you do is you take it with each meal. Okay, not in the beginning of the day and just take it with each meal. So you keep it in a little thing in your pocket, and as you're eating, if you have a kind of a sensitive stomach, I really suggest you take it before the meal or during the meal. Because after the meal, if you're gonna burp up a little bit, those enzymes will burn the bottom of your esophagus. So that the FOS, GOS. Now, to help the cells, you can use butyrate or tributyrate and look for short chain fatty acids. Butyrate is what helps the cells heal. And a lot of people use glutamine. Glutamine is good for healing the gut in about 4 to 7 grams a day. But if you take it and you get like this, it's because the glutamine creates glutamate, which is an excitotoxin, but there's an enzyme called GAD, glutamate carboxylase, if you want to be picky, to convert it into GABA, which is what calms your brain down. Some people that doesn't work that well, and as soon as they use the glutamate, they get very, nervous because the glutamate goes up. Then stop using it and just use the butyrate. Okay, simple as that. Yes, there's lots of other stuff you can do. I wrote a book on leaky gut called Leaky Gut, Leaky Brain, Leaky Gut, Leaky Cells, Leaky Brain, which is on Amazon. Okay, now a lot of people talk probiotics. Probiotics aren't always necessary. Sometimes if you use the prebiotics, they feed your microbiome that's already in there and help it to replicate. But if you want to take probiotics, look for a product that has a balance of lactobacilli and bifidobacteria. There's loads of probiotics that have lots of different claims, and a lot of them are pretty good, but it's hard to do the mixtures. If you use a basic microbiome supplement, you're going to be in the ballpark. So believe it or not, giving your body what it needs to run the biochemical processes and treating a leaky gut handles 90% of what the issues are. The only other thing you can add in is lecithins. Okay, there's sunflower lecithin, soy lecithin, egg lecithin. Okay, what that does is provide your body with the building blocks of your cell membranes. That's something that a lot of people don't, a lot of practitioners don't consider. Okay, the cell membranes. You see that my symbol is bioindividualized medicine. That's a thought or diagnostic paradigm that puts genetics, that neuroendoimmunology I spoke about, mitochondrial dysfunction, and cell membrane stability into a thought paradigm that you use as a diagnostic guide. All of this stuff that happens with the inflammation affects your mitochondria. You've heard the word before, and simply what those are those little organelles in your cells that produce your energy. There's so many ways they can be blocked. So many ways. It can be acidic and all kinds of things that can block the entry of what are called electron donors into the mitochondria. So to support mitochondrial function, you're already doing it when you did what I just said. Okay, you're already doing it. Are there specialized things with glutathione and so forth and so on? Yeah, there are. Okay, but believe it or not, that's really beyond the scope of what we're talking about. Okay, one is simple, and I call that foundational treatment. It goes by a lot of other names because people took it from me, and I let them. Okay, as long as people do it right, I don't care if you put your name on it. Okay, you can sell it your own. I don't care as long as you're doing it right. Okay, I've never had the Armine protocol. There's no name out there like that. I freely give the stuff away because I want people to get better. Now, beyond that, you may need to look at particular things to treat because you need to treat root causes and downstream effects. The difference is in traditional medicine, if they treat the root cause, like Lyme disease, they expect the body to heal itself. But when the condition becomes chronic and all of that deficiency and problems happen, just treating the root cause doesn't do that. And in Lyme disease, the common wisdom is the Lyme disease cannot be cured. Yes, it can, but you have to treat what the Lyme disease did to the body. That takes a bit of expertise and experience, but it's definitely possible. And that it goes for almost any other infection. Most times I get people who have had the infections treated, but they're still not better. So I go to the foundation. So that little program that I just mentioned, which isn't all that hard to do, will handle a lot of stuff. And you might see your energy come up. Yes, some people like to add CoQ10. Those are all fine. But the basic program and paying attention to the form so it's absorbable is the key to this. Now that I've bent everybody's ear,
Yeah, amazing. So much I learned from you within just these few minutes. Yes, and I will definitely search for that. It would be great if we can direct our listeners to your website or where they can find your book. So we will put all the links in the description to this
Mhm.
episode. And I would like to ask also how you usually provide some consultations that
Sure.
maybe, yeah, people.
What I do is if you go to my website, drjessarmine.com, if you want to ask me a quick question, you can use my email address. But if you just want to go to my website, you'll see a link to schedule a complimentary 30-minute discovery call. Purpose of that is you can ask me questions, I can ask you questions, and I can determine if I can help you or not. I also have, if you're seeing a doctor, I also have something called a second opinion consultation where I'll go over everything. You don't have to leave your doctor and evaluate what's happening and generate a report, explain everything to you that you can give your provider as further guidance. Okay. I work with a lot of providers and they often come to me for consultations in their cases that they're having difficulty with. And of course, I do treat patients. Okay. And I have a pretty good success rate on treating those things that have been confusing in the past.
Yes, thank you so much. We will provide all the links and information in the description to this video. So back to our interview, I want to also ask you some questions. So if the person feels that like getting quickly tired, is like low energy, what sign it can be? What should be the first thing such person should have look at?
Low energy comes from a lack of excuse me, mitochondrial function. Okay. In order to get that, the entire system that creates the energy, glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and then the products of the Krebs cycle going into the mitochondria. Okay, all those things, there's going to be blockades in there somewhere. Okay, and you're not going to produce enough energy, which is called ATP. Some people might know what that means, adenosine triphosphate. Okay, and that's the whole purpose of it. And we could get really technical, but essentially, if you pay attention to those pathways, you should see your energy come up. How do you pay attention to those pathways? I just told you. Okay, believe it or not, that is the glitch that I've seen over decades. I get people who've been treating everywhere else, and I'm like, oh, they told me to take a multivitamin. Like, what did you do? I went to the local pharmacy and got got a multivitamin. Okay. All right. And of course, in the vitamin world, there's so many companies that tell you they have the magic bullet. Anybody who says I have this product that can cure everything, stay away from them. Okay. Listen, I've been doing this a really long time. I can tell you what's come down the pike, what has been presented, that comes in with big fanfare. They charge a lot of money, or it's in a multi-level marketing format, and it simply doesn't work. Or it makes you feel better, but then as soon as you stop using it, you feel terrible, which means you never got to the root cause. If you do nothing else, if you do nothing else, a good multivitamin, multimineral in the liposomal form, if you're in the UK, look at the Natural Dispensary, okay? That has a lot of good products. You can look at Amazon UK, of course, okay? Look for the liposomal products. And like I said, take double the dosage. You're not going to hurt yourself. Okay. You're not going to get hypervitaminosis A or E, that kind of stuff. There, it's almost impossible to do, regardless of what the literature says, because the literature is based on politics, honestly. Okay. If you do nothing else, do that. Because if anything, you're deficient in that stuff. Okay. And at a very minimum, that you may see a difference in a few weeks. Okay. If you do the basic program I just mentioned and you don't start feeling better, that's when you should seek a consultation, because simply there's other stuff going on that has to be evaluated. I'm a very old doctor. Sorry. And I do things by history, by taking, my initial intake is 90 minutes, because I go through an entire history from the time you were in the mommy's womb all the way out, and I'll figure out what's wrong. A lot of people come with a lot of testing. That's fine. I'll read it through. I'll correlate it. But I'm not one of those doctors where I want you to have 3,000 pounds of testing, or $3,000 of testing, or $10,000 of testing before you see me. Okay. I'll figure out. And if something is necessary, we'll talk about it. But often, if you just, Sir William Osler, who was the founding father of Johns Hopkins Medical Center, said, if you listen to your patient, he's telling you the diagnosis. He said that in 1895. What happened? Okay. Now medicine is corporatized and they force doctors into 10 or 15 minutes a patient. It's almost impossible. And the doctors do care. They just can't do their thing in 15 minutes. Just can't. It's tough. And they rely on testing, and testing isn't as exacting as you'd like. Now, granted, I don't take loads of patients. Okay. I take very specific patients, the ones that I know I can help, but I'm also cognizant of my time because I teach a lot. I lecture a lot. So at my age, what I'm doing is passing off the knowledge that I have to other doctors. And that's really great. I enjoy doing that like you wouldn't believe. But the people who we decide together that we can work together usually have a very good recovery rate, because I sit down and figure out what's wrong, usually by their history. That's the way to do it.
Mm. Yes, so profound approach as it should be, of course. And what about insomnia? What sign can insomnia give? Like if people have insomnia, what it can tell about? Like where they have to look at for the reason.
All right. The basic thing about insomnia is you need to ask yourself a question. Do you have trouble falling asleep? Do you have trouble staying asleep once you fell asleep? Like, do you wake up and you can't go back to sleep? Or both? All right. If it's just falling asleep, it's usually a lack of melatonin, by the way, which comes from serotonin. Serotonin creates melatonin. So if you go backwards, you want to work on, yes, you can give melatonin, but that's giving the result of the deficiency, and you have to be on it for forever. Okay. But if you treat by building serotonin, you'll create melatonin. And if you can't stay asleep, it's usually a combination of serotonin and GABA. Okay. That's what keeps you asleep. So when the melatonin hits you, like you go down like this, and you're in this a real deep sleep, and then about every 90 minutes, you come up into REM sleep until you hit wakefulness. Okay. Most people don't have restorative sleep. Reasons for that, okay, are what you've been told, okay, looking at your cell phone, or, you know, if your light is your cell phone, looking at this at night, okay, and then you turn it off and you expect to go to sleep. It's not going to happen, because the sleep wake cycle depends on light, which produces glutamate that creates forebrain arousal, which is wakefulness. Okay. And they always tell you that, you should cut out the light towards nighttime. Okay. Because you want that glutamate to go down and the melatonin to take over. Do you know the only population that does not have insomnia? The Amish,
Hmm.
because they don't have electricity, or even if they do, they work and they stop working and they let their bodies normally reestablish themselves. I was a Boy Scout leader for a long time. Okay. And one of the ways of recreating that circadian rhythm is to go camping without the electronics. Okay. Very quickly, your body's going to start achieving its normal circadian rhythms again.
Mhm.
The use of a lot of alcohol, because what happens with alcohol is you'll fall asleep, yes, okay, because there's a lot of GABA release. But since we can't metabolize more than 1 ounce of alcohol an hour, what happens is it produces an aldehyde, very much like formaldehyde. And that's why you wake up in the middle of the night going like this, because that irritates your brain. Okay. So if you're drinking an awful lot of alcohol, you may find that you're not having restorative sleep, because even if you don't wake up, you're not really down at that level. You're kind of just below. I call it twilighting. Okay, just below the wakefulness level. Okay, and it takes a toll on your body like you wouldn't believe. It absorbs B vitamins and overuses them, and you start losing that, and so forth. Okay, so alcohol, eating late at night, the digestive system is not made to do that. You need to let it empty and for autophagy to take place, which is the cells, kind of exchanging themselves and getting rid of the waste and so forth. Okay. There are many other factors in insomnia that may initiate it. Okay. But basically, the three things that you have to look for are melatonin, serotonin, and GABA. Now, you can create serotonin by using 5-hydroxytryptophan, 5-HTP, not tryptophan, but 5-HTP. But again, you're making some presumptions, but if you're going to try, then, start at a low dose and work your way up. GABA in the UK is not allowed. Okay. There are liposomal GABAs out there in different countries that you can utilize, especially for anxiety. But again, it's not a benzodiazepine, which is what you usually use. It's actually GABA that goes into the brain in 5 minutes and gets metabolized out. Okay. Again, you can use that temporarily, but if you don't get at the reasons for it, you're going to be spending a lot of money on liposomal GABA, okay, or on benzodiazepines. The reason they become addictive is because you need them and you start damaging the receptor. So picture this. If you have a normal nervous system, but you had a bad day, got cut off in traffic, your boss is yelling at you, the kids are being bad, and you say to yourself, I'm going to have a drink. And then the GABA in the drink returns you to normal and just go along. But most of us have real hyperactive nervous systems. So you take a benzo or you have some alcohol and you go down and you feel pretty good, but that doesn't stay on the receptor very long. You pop back up into the anxious range. That's where most of us are. What is that anxiety? Inflammation, usually from leaky gut syndrome and whatever the root causes are. But even if you take care of the root causes, meditation and that, you still have the downstream effect of leaky gut that's kicking that up. So what's the target? Bringing the inflammation down. How do you do that? Program I just mentioned, and any specific things you need to do for that particular individual physiology. Other thing I'm going to tell you guys, be careful of doctors that do protocols. They actually advertise it. I do that protocol. I do this protocol. Protocols were not made to be etched in stone. They were made to be starting points. Okay. I don't like the word protocol in my practice, but I know them all and I use them as starting points. Like, okay, but you have to individualize it to the person's unique physiology, and everybody's a unique person. Okay, that's the way to use a protocol. So if the doctor's, practices a protocol, you know, it's sort of like if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Okay. You need somebody who's more generalized. I often call myself a generalized specialist. Okay, because GP is often ostracized here, but I'm good at a lot of different areas. I also know when to refer people, when it's appropriate. And I have no problem doing it. Okay, because I want the best for my patients.
Yes, amazing, amazing. I learned so much from this interview with you, and I'm sure that many people who are listening to us
I hope so.
also would like to learn more. So, thank you so much just for your time and sharing your knowledge and
Thank you.
experience
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to see you again in our future episodes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.